Oh no.
Today's episode of the Inside EVs podcast is brought to you by E-Range EV Tyre. E-Range EV tyres are specifically engineered for electric vehicles. Using an advanced manufacturing process called liquid phase mixing, E-Range EV's EcoPoint 3 technology creates a tyre with lower rolling resistance and longer range, while offering low levels of wear and high grip. All this while staying affordable. Go to erangetires.com. That's E-R-A-N-G-E tires.com to find your EV's next set of tyres.
Hello, and welcome to the Inside EVs podcast. It's July the 7th, 2023, and this is episode number 170. Thanks for joining us. On today's show, we'll be talking about Mercedes adopting the Tesla North American Charging Standard, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration reopening Tesla unintended acceleration cases, and riding the Taiga Orca personal watercraft, and also the debut of the Fiat 600e. I'm Dominic Yoni, Inside EV's editor and forum moderator. Joining us today is the unperturbable Mr. Tom Moloughney, senior editor at Inside EVs and host of the YouTube channel State of Charge. We also have the mighty Mr. Martin Lee from the EV News Daily podcast, which is available on all the best podcast platforms and some of the dodgy ones as well. And of course, Kyle Connor joins us from the majestic, practically palatial halls of Out of Spec Studios, where he produces high voltage videos for a growing number of YouTube channels. Welcome, everybody.
Good morning.
All right. How's it going?
What's up, guys?
It's sunny here, so I'm going to get a bunch of free energy into my car, which makes, as a perennial tight ass, that makes me very, very happy.
Is that a South-Britain expression?
Okay, yeah, I hate spending money. So if I don't need to, so the cars are plugged in, I'm charging for free. It's not for free, obviously. I had to buy the solar panels, but it's a beautifully sunny. I'll get about 30 kilowatt hours in the car today, from sunrise to sunset, which had the longest day of the year a couple of weeks ago. So I'm very happy, driving on sunshine, yada yada.
Awesome. Right. Yeah, I'm cranking out about 60 kilowatt hour a day now in the peak. And during the best, clearest days, I get like 58, 59, right around there is what I'm doing. Have you calculated, Martin, your payback period, like when you think you'll be above water?
Yeah, well, our energy prices, that was different to yours. So partly with Russia and Ukraine and other things as well. So I was paying 5 and 15, so 5 pence overnight, which is already expensive compared to some states, but 5 pence overnight and 15p during the day per unit per kilowatt hour. And I went to 9 and 45. So 45 pence, what's that? 55 cents, whatever per unit per kilowatt hour. And my payback went from 9 years to 3.5 years.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It took me about 8 years to get above water. But now I've had the system, I put it on in early 2010. So it's been 13 years and I'm in the plus, more than $10,000.
Wow.
Between the, savings, and we have these things called SRECs here, solar renewable energy credits I get to sell back. That expires after 15 years. So I only get to sell them for another year and a half. And then it's just the electricity savings. But super. I mean, I tell everybody, if you can do it, if you're going to be at your home for a long time, you got to go do it because it's just fantastic. And it's great just driving on sunshine. I love that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's great. It's a good feeling just trickling that electricity in. And we have the home battery, not a big one, just 10 kilowatt hours, but it's enough to be a sponge when we need it to be. So, if the car's full, that fills up. Or if we put a load of washing on, washing machines go through heating cycles and then they stop, then they just sort of rinse. And it's all that kind of, that's where a home battery comes in. And maybe we can use our cars for this in the future with vehicle to home and stuff. But if you can do solar and if you can do a small home battery that acts as a buffer, that's a better word. Just to soak up the stuff you don't need rather than exporting it. And then a minute later, you'll boil the kettle for coffee and then, you're pulling in from the grid. If you can have that, it's not cheap, but we were really lucky that we could do it. Man, try and do it. We need more ways to finance this as well for people who can't afford the upfront. We just need more ingenious financing schemes.
Yeah, and as far as the on-site energy storage, it really depends where you live. You have to look into that. Like for me, Martin, I have net metering here for my electricity. So I get paid by the utility the exact amount that I pay for electricity. So
Wow.
when I am exporting, when I'm kicking some excess generation out to the grid, it doesn't financially benefit me to hold it here because they have to pay me what I pay them. So you have to look into your specific situation.
Wow.
What your utility, how your utility works. And here in the US, we have over 3,000 different utilities, and they all have different rules. So we can't, people all the time ask me for advice on this, stationary, and I kind of say, look, without me spending hours trying to figure out how your utility works and what you pay off peak, on peak, you've got to do some research on that to decide if the stationary energy storage really is an economic benefit for you or not. So while I love it, in some instances, you're paying for something that you don't need, is what I'm saying.
I'm with Octopus. They are in the US, in Texas, I think. They're just expanding, but they pay 4.1 pence. So for if I export, so there's a huge offset between what it costs me to buy it and to sell it back. So a battery makes, which is why the payback price time went down so much. Man, I love that. That net metering sounds fair. Actually, it sounds fair because it's not going back to the utility; it's going to your neighbor,
my neighbors,
who lives next door to you. So that's the way it works.
All right. Okay. Hey, guys, so we just got into the studio this morning, and Kyle let us know that there's big news just dropped, and I've scooted over to the Mercedes-Benz media website, and Mercedes-Benz is going to be the first German automaker to jump on the Tesla North American charging standard. They say that they will. They're expanding the charging options for customers, access to Tesla Supercharger network in North America while building its own high-powered charging network. So Mercedes-Benz is to integrate North American charging standards, NACS, in its electric vehicle lineup introduction in North America starting 2025. These are the same dates that we've seen for Ford and GM and the others that have jumped on board, Volvo and Polestar as well. So Mercedes drivers will gain access to more than 12,000 Tesla Superchargers across North America beginning in 2024. And they're simultaneously going to expand the new Mercedes-Benz charging network with more than 2,500 high-powered chargers in North America to provide a best-in-class charging experience. And the first Mercedes-Benz high-powered charging sites to open in Q4 of 2023, that's this year, for both Mercedes-Benz and non-Mercedes-Benz drivers. All right, so that's pretty cool. What do you think of that, Kyle?
Yeah, great news. We knew it was going to happen. Thought the Germans would be last to switch. They're definitely not first.
Right.
But hey, we knew Mercedes was going to be closer to the front of this than anyone else. They're the most progressive. They've worked with Tesla in the past. They're a large reason as to why Tesla exists today.
True.
But whether or not there's a lot of bad blood there now that Tesla's doing so well, I don't know. But either way, you look at their statements, you look at this release, it shows they care about EV driver experiences. They're building out their own hubs, as well as utilizing access to the Tesla Supercharger network. It's just great to see them going so big into charging. Last week, I mentioned on the show talking to the engineers who were still a little bit on the fence at the time when I was talking to them a few weeks ago. And I was like, you have to switch. And I'm glad to see they made the decision as a company with a lot of different parties involved to switch. This is the right direction.
Ahead of BMW too, Tom. What do you think? Is there much competition there? And do you think, like, are they looking at each other and BMW is going to announce by the end of the day, or what?
Sure. Well, the thing is, I think once Ford made the announcement, it was over. Everybody was going to eventually do it. It's just on what time frame. I think they had to, because you don't want to be the company that doesn't offer that is walled off from 12,000 Tesla Superchargers. So to me, while it's big that this is the first German brand, on the other hand, it's not that big for me because it was inevitable. It wasn't, in my opinion, at least, it wasn't an option of, well, do you think the Germans are going to do this? Of course they were. Of course, Mercedes was going to, of course, BMW is going to, Volkswagen Group is going to. So, this was, in my opinion, it was a fait accompli. It was done. This was sealed. It's just a matter of, I think, how long it takes each individual company to work out their deal with Tesla. And, quite honestly, for the internal war, because I'm sure there's tons of meetings happening inside these companies, and they're trying to decide how do they position this to make them not look bad. Right. And, I'm sure, and one thing that amazes me, and it doesn't amaze me anymore, but as I first got into electric vehicle coverage and, reporting on EVs 10 years ago or so, it was so interesting to find that within every company, when I talked to different people, they had such strong opinions about electric mobility and about how they were going to present that to their customer base. And they were so concerned about, at the same time, denigrating their existing bread and butter products that are, make them the money with this future product that they knew was going to come. They didn't know what the timeline was going to be. So there's wars inside these companies, literally. Board of directors, people get fired, CEOs get ousted over the decision of how do they handle messaging electric vehicle adoption. And this is a huge part of it, like the fact that they are going to capitulate to Tesla. Like they're going to say, you were right all along. What you offer is better. So we're going to, that's a tough pill for a lot of these people to swallow. And, that's why I think that's what's holding up, keeping everybody from just announcing it in 1 week. It's all this internal decisions on how do we message it? How do we strike the best deal we can with Tesla? And that's interesting. So I know it was a long answer for a short question, but it really, I'm amazed by the internal workings of these companies. When I talk to one person and then I talk to another a month later, and it's like, do you guys work for the same company? And it's they really are very concerned with how this looks on the brand.
Right. Well, I think it's pretty interesting, but that they've also, decided they're going to open up their own charging network. And Martin had a picture of the one of their, just an illustration, I guess, a render of what one of their sites might look like. And if they can build that, like with a nice canopy with a little LED star field on the top there, that looks really nice. And we need charging stations with canopies that's like, and pull through, charging spots. That looks really awesome.
Yeah, it's just with these premium brands, I just wonder how much they will want the others using them. I guess if they're opening up, they got no choice. But
right.
If, again, as to what Tom just said, if you work at a premium brand and you're so preoccupied with how that metal switch feels in your finger, and is the leather just right in the seats, and all of a sudden you've got your charging network, you've got these beautiful stations like that, and some little Herbert like me turns up in their Chinese MG and plugging in their crappy old car into your, it's just not great. But I if I worked there, if I was on the board, it would be a concern. So, but if they're opening it, they're opening it. And you know what? Actually, I thought I'd raise it with you guys. One of the things that people have fed back to me over the last 1 or 2 weeks, actually, via my own social media and emails and stuff like that, if people who listen to my podcast and also watch this show, is a little frustration creeping in. I think that we haven't always differentiated, when we have this discussion about NACS, differentiated between the plug, which is the connector, the software that makes it work, and the Tesla supercharging network. And I think maybe that was triggered by perhaps Peter Rollins from Lucid that said it's not a big deal, it's just a plug. And I think that maybe that triggered a few people into thinking, well, has he got a point? Because people have said to me, you keep saying this is sort of a the solution to all of our charging woes. And I have some sympathy with those people that have said that, because there is a difference here between, NACS isn't one thing. There's Tesla opening up their charging network to others to use it. There's other car companies putting that plug on their car. And then there is other networks, Electrify America, EVgo, etc., then having to integrate that into theirs. Now, it all might be brilliant and perfect and seamless, or some of those steps might fall down along the way. They are different things. I thought I'd raise it this week on the show, because I think I've seen a little bit of pushback from people going, look, this isn't perfect. NACS isn't perfect. Yeah, okay, but the big thing is, if you sell any brand of car, just being able to use the Tesla supercharging network full stop without an adapter, that's night and day. So that's worth it already. So if Electrify America then move everything over from CCS to NACS, then I think that's gravy as well. But I thought, yeah, maybe they got a bit of a point.
Well, they do have a point, 100%. But the fact of the matter is, let's start from the user experience. Besides this charging station working, just the physical experience of grabbing that Tesla connector and putting it in your Mercedes versus the clunky CCS1 with the big tab on the top. It's heavy. It's difficult to maneuver. Kyle can tell you, he lives at charging stations even more than I do, and I'm there a lot. So often we see people struggling to plug in their CCS-enabled vehicles. And the user experience. Mercedes is an expensive brand. Their owners tend to be older. They might have a little bit even more trouble with this big clunky CCS1 connector, getting it attached and locked onto the vehicle. So before we even talk about reliability and whether it's going to work or not, Martin, I think it's important to point out that it's just a more elegant solution for their customers. And that's the first step of it is what they want to provide, the white glove, very simple, grab that connector with one hand, slide it in, and it automatically, locks to you don't need that locking tab or whatever. So I think it already is better. And then we deal with getting all of these other stations to work as well as the vertically integrated Tesla superchargers do. And what I believe is that the fact that the CCS customers, the previous CCS customers, now will have an option to go to these, thousands of Tesla superchargers will put additional pressure on the Electrify Americas, the EV Goes, the charge points to make sure their crap works. Because before, there was no, where else are you going to go when you're on a road trip? You had to use one of them. But now that extra pressure, I think, will help push them even harder than before.
Right. They have to. I mean, they've sunk so many billions into building their networks. They can't just abandon them now. That would be.
Exactly. And if they just don't work, people will stop going to them and they'll just find superchargers on their road trips. And then they won't have any revenue. So this puts, there really wasn't pressure on them before because there was no singular network of an option that we could use that we know worked all the time. So we had to roll the dice and go to EA and go to charge points and go to EV Goes. But now it's like, okay, I'm on a let's say today was 2025 and I could go anywhere with my Lightning. I'm driving down to Florida. I would just look for superchargers on the way. I wouldn't even look for the other networks. And that's lost revenue for those guys. So that's how I look at it, at least. This is a win-win-win-win. It's not going to solve everything the first second that those NACS charge ports are on the other vehicles, but it's going to accelerate the process of getting all this crap to work.
Right. Yeah. That map looks amazing. That's just like lots and lots of chargers. So just getting back to the Mercedes-Benz thing for a bit, though, I just want to say that they talk a bit more about what they're doing. So they're establishing their own high-power charging network with more than 400 charging hubs. That's going to be 2,500 high-power chargers in North America by the end of the decade. So it's not going to be as huge, obviously, as what Tesla has, but it should be significant. And I think this is kind of important. And I think other automakers have kind of missed this, including Mercedes-Benz up to this point. Because if you look back at that picture, that's a nice charging site. People drive up there, whatever they're driving in their Tesla, say, and they know this is like a Mercedes, sort of unit and experience, and that's a selling. That's another way to sell cars, right? They could make, it's a sales point. It's a way to pitch people while they're at that station. They could have, I don't know, just the signage alone and having a nice experience does a lot. And so I just think that's something that other automakers in general have just overlooked, and just allowed the Electrify Americas and EV Goes to kind of give them some money and let them do all the work. But I think they're really missing a trick here. Martin, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think all good points. Yeah, I totally agree. It'd be interesting to see how they go with building their own network. We've seen these big announcements before from other car companies, but I think that I think it seems realistic in terms of the numbers they're talking about. They've got the money to do it,
Right.
and it could be a half decent way to sell your brand to people. If if you're not driving Mercedes and you turn up to a lovely Mercedes, or the Audi ones in Germany have a little lounge and stuff.
Right.
I'm not sure if they're still locked to Audi only, the ones in Germany. They've started building them out. I haven't been to one yet, but
you can bring any car to the
Oh.
Audi charger, as far as I'm
Okay.
aware, because I took a Taycan to one. I know it's in the group,
Yeah,
but it worked fine at the Audi charging hub, and I got to go inside.
Okay.
and it's a great way to sell the brand. In the future, because the cars are commoditized. I'm not saying anyone can just bolt an EV together, but the Chinese are doing a half decent job at it. A battery, a motor, and off you go. And then so the brand becomes everything. The brand, the logo, what the car makes you feel, apart from what it costs, is going to be even more important than car brands are at the minute. If that could be the case, with all the TV ads of just good-looking people doing things that don't really involve cars, but the brand becomes even more important in EV world, because there's just so little to differentiate between them. Like they all drive brilliantly, they're all fast. So it's these kind of things are a nice way to sell the brand, and more importantly, to make money, because
Right.
I still think there's huge bits of the industry who haven't worked out the story of electric mobility, which everyone thinks, and I'm increasingly being convinced, everyone thinks it's making the vehicles. And I think Tesla realized this such a long time ago. They even said it on multiple earnings calls. The future is selling energy. I think that's it. I think to be the gas stations of the future. Cars, take them or leave them. But if you're in control if you're the gatekeeper to the energy, so you want to use those charging stations, you get to set the pricing or whatever, that's where the source is. And I was late to that realization. And I still think loads of people haven't realized it. But and I feel a bit dumb for it, because Tesla said it openly years ago. That's the future. Making cars, whatever. Controlling the energy of how we move around in our lives, and heat and cool our homes, etc.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a much bigger prize.
Yeah.
And Tesla got,
Storage.
Tesla
And
got there
the
first.
mini grid. They got the mini grid over there in England.
Yeah,
believe.
so there's a change to that. It runs on Octopus.
Right.
And it's the Tesla energy plan. So what's happening with that? I do know. I saw a document. So Tesla have applied. They've got one level of approval at the minute, I think, which is to run the Tesla energy plan on Octopus. I saw something recently. Not sure if I was meant to have seen it or not. Should have thought about that before I started this sentence. No, I mean, if it's a public document, it is. But it is. I think they are becoming an energy company. So I think if you drive a Tesla, you might think, well, I won't be with either EDF or Octopus. I'll be with Tesla. So if you want to be on the Tesla energy plan, you've got to do it through Octopus at the minute. I think the plan here is that Tesla become an energy provider, just like another electricity company. And there's so much love for the brand. I think a lot of people will move just because it's Tesla, and that's an okay thing. And that is interesting, because if you don't have to have a car, you don't have to have the home battery, but if you do, and you say to Tesla, you can have 20% of the battery for some really killer energy costs, and you do with that what you will. That energy arbitrage is really interesting. So Tesla got off a little bit of battery all around the country of lots of people's batteries. That's mega. That's huge.
Yeah. Hey, one last little thing from this Mercedes press release before we move on. I just want to say this. So this charging network is going to be not just North America. It's going to be across the world. So 400 in North America by the end of the decade. And then, was it 2,500? No. 2,000 altogether in North America, Europe, and China, and other core markets by the end of the decade. So yeah, in total, these will be comprised of more than 10,000 charging points, which can be further expanded depending on market needs, they say. So that's significant, maybe not quite Tesla levels, of course, ambition wise, but significant. I think a nice little add-on. All right. So just recently this week, the National Highway Traffic, how do we say that? The Safety Administration has opened up Tesla unintended acceleration cases. So in the past, there's been a number of these cases, where people, for whatever reason, believe they're pressing the brake and the car just accelerates and they can't seem to control it. And typically they hit something at some point, and it's not great. And so so there's been an investigation from NHTSA into that situation, and it was closed. They've assumed it was solved, but now it's been reopened again. Somebody has petitioned them or sent a new petition. This guy, Ronald A. Belt, has sent a petition. It's like 34 pages long on this PDF file. It's quite huge. And it's so what they've done, they say that the acceleration is possible in a Tesla, which Elon Musk and others have denied it's possible for different fail safes involved in the whole system. But so they're looking at what they did. There's this guy in Ireland named Damien McGuire, and Kyle, maybe you're familiar with Damien. He was a friend of Jack Rickard's, so he'd show up on EVTV sometimes. But yeah, he's a nice guy, and he basically took apart the Tesla inverter and made his own. Just kind of saw what kind of components, and then had his own circuit boards and put it all together. And so they're using this. This Ronald dude is using this as his basis for his information. So he's basically claiming that there's like an intermittent electrical current demands on the vehicle's 12-volt systems, and so the car sometimes uses a lot of energy to assist the steering, like up to 100 amps, as they claim. And so when that happens, the 12-volt system can drop to near zero for several hundred microseconds. And if a recalibration is initiated during that interval, then an incorrect calibration voltage could be produced that is very close to 0 volts. And based on that researchers' findings, that will last until another calibration is performed, which may be minutes later. So once the calibration is performed with the faulty data, it can cause a spike equivalent to pressing the accelerator pedal all the way down. So it sounds pretty damning. I read that and I'm like, oh my God, maybe this is like an actual possibility, because this is a little bit over my head. I'm not like an electrical engineer or an engineer of any kind. I don't know. But there are some pretty smart people on the internet. So this has already been being challenged. I don't know if I don't know if I've lost my train of thought. I just saw Randy Jeniak in the comments just mentioned that braking Mercedes just announced NACS adoption, which we just talked about. So just
late to the party, Randy.
Morning, Randy.
Good morning. Yeah, just rewind a little bit. Yeah, so there are. I don't think Tesla has really responded to this yet, has he? Has anyone seen a tweet from Elon about this? Kyle?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And if he's smart, he won't.
Well, anyway.
Shut up, Elon.
But someone who Elon is familiar with, this guy Jason Hughes, he's on Twitter. He's at WK057, and he's a pretty smart guy. And I think he runs. Did he start Comma AI? Is that the same guy? No. Okay. But he has been doing a lot of things with Tesla over the years, like tearing things down, and he's been critical of them in some cases. But he's saying, well, he calls it this petition a hit piece. I don't know if that's goes to motivation. Who knows why a person is motivated to do something like this. Maybe they're truly concerned about the safety of people in cars. But yeah, he calls it a hit piece, and he kind of tears it all down and makes some pretty good counter arguments that it's not possible. He says that, the research into the Tesla inverters is flawed, which is why the open source controllers always damage the units when used. So Tesla's accelerated pedal power, it's derived from the 12-volt system, is using two independent isolated 5-volt supplies, and those run along independently on both sides of the vehicle to the pedal. So there's no way for the fault in that system to create the correct signals for full acceleration. He says it's just not possible. If somehow the 12-volt system were so low, it caused the isolated 5-volt supplies and their capacitors to drop below expected voltages, that'd sag the entire curve of the dual sensors, leading to a pedal fault, not full acceleration. So he says, long story short, this is complete nonsense based on faulty analysis of the hardware, just like the document that claimed the same based on assumptions a few years back. So I don't know. That seems to close the cover on the book, except for me anyway, because it all sounds pretty reasonable. As well, because they talk about, they go back over the into the black box to see exactly what happened during these incidents, and while it may indicate the pedal down, they don't talk about the brake pedal, which would still show up if this was like the case. If someone actually hit the brake pedal, those two should cancel them out, each other out, for one thing. But there's also no record of brakes being hit on these black box recordings after post accidents. So anyway, that's the story. Kyle, what do you think?
Well, look, no one's been able to prove that this has happened yet from my eyes. So
Right.
until they can recreate it or show it in some way, or, then to me, yeah, like, let's do the research. Why not? It's not going to hurt looking into this. Sure, it's going to cost some money, but money for safety is always a good thing.
Right. Simon Matthews asks, does Jason have Tesla shares? He does not, I believe. I believe he says that. And he's been, critical of Tesla on a number of fronts in the past.
Yeah, I find Jason to be awesome. I know him. He's great. I've known him for years.
Okay.
And just one of the coolest Tesla hackers out there. Certainly is interesting to see his take on this. I would say, from my side, like, research it, figure it out, make the car safer. I'm all for that. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
But if it's really a non-issue, why are we wasting our time? So,
and the government's time.
Ireland, and convince the NHTSA to believe that this must be some kind of issue to some extent. So the research will be done, I guess.
Right. Tom, what do you think?
So, I think there's enough smoke to have a full-on NHTSA, and I think it's the Office of Defects Investigation that actually handles this type of investigation, to have them look into it for sure. We've heard of this unintended acceleration for decades now. You remember Toyota took a huge hit from that with the Prius, but it was never proven that in a single instance that it was the car. It was always determined to be user error. And I like to err on the side of that side, because that's how it's been always until we see a car that's proven to actually accelerate by itself. My default position is it's been user error, because it's always been. But I'm certainly open to the possibility, especially today, as cars are becoming more and more automated, more and more computer components involved. I think the likelihood of having an unintended acceleration event like this is possible, much more so than previously. So let's let the Office of Investigative of Defect Investigations do their thorough investigation, and we'll see. It just does seem like there's been so many people swearing to this, and even like I said, in China, you've got people setting up cameras in their footwells. That doesn't mean anything, but there's a lot of smoke here, is what I'm saying. But there was a lot of smoke back with the Prius. So, let's see what happens. But I'm kind of on Kyle's side. My default position is, until it's proven that this is really happening, we can't assume it is. Even with what we've seen so far from that one person in Ireland, that put this together. It all sounds great. It's above my pay grade, but there could be fatal flaws in his research that the other guy, Jason, seemed to point out, but who knows if he knows what he's doing. So
I think what's not up for debate for me is that the cars, Teslas particularly, but a lot of electric vehicles, are unlocking performance that people would not necessarily have had access to before. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of half joked before. I think Tom joked. I remember when he first drove the Model S Plaid and was like, I wouldn't let a 20-year-old me in this car. And, we've all laughed that we've seen those Instagram accounts of, millionaires' sons or whatever. They've just gone and bought their Lamborghini and they're like, look at my Lamborghini. And then like three minutes later, it's in a hedge. And, and you think at the time, I've got no sympathy. But, Teslas are very affordable in relative terms for the performance that you get. And it's one of the things that's always crossed my mind, is that it unlocks a level of performance that is so instant with so little fuss. We've all seen people who are perhaps less good at driving or perhaps less sensitive on a clutch, revving the life out of a car, and you hear it, and you're like, oh my goodness, you're not necessarily the most competent, a manual gearbox. And so I've always heard, when I've ever seen these stories, like, oh my goodness, my Tesla went so fast and I crashed. It's it's the car's fault. Naturally, I kind of think, well, with a lack of any proof on this, let's also remember these cars are really high, in relative terms, high performance compared to just 20 or 30 years ago, what the kind of car that money would buy you. So,
Right.
and also, like, we have a chain ferry near here because I live by the coast, and it's either a half an hour drive around or it's a 5-minute chain ferry. It fits about 30 cars on, and it has the little roll down ramp, and you drive down the ramp and you drive onto the ferry, and it takes you across the entrance to the harbor. I live in Poole Harbor, and there's always cars in the drink. Like there's always cars where people have just hit the wrong pedal. Petrol cars, combustion cars happened 2 weeks ago. It was in the local newspaper, and there's just this picture of a car floating out to sea into the Atlantic because
that's no good.
They're fine. It was okay, but they just pressed the wrong pedal and drove down the ramp when the ferry was the other side, and they're in the water.
Oh.
So there's no barriers, and it's like people make mistakes that I've always erred on the side of, having never experienced it myself, or a personal friend or anyone who I know that said to me, oh, this thing happened. It's a bit like when they took the radar sensors out of Teslas.
Okay. Tesla. Mm-hmm.
It's awful. Like, I wouldn't let my wife drive that, on a road with shadows, tree shadows, the sun's at a certain time of day. I've been in a Tesla where it just slams on the brakes, and if a car was close behind me, it would have rear-ended me. Like, maybe they've got it. I've not driven that system in a little while. It was a Model Y a couple of months ago that didn't have. It was just on vision, and it was just it's awful. Like, and you hear those stories from people you trust all the time to go, yeah, no, it's actually, that's rubbish. Like, the autopilot at the minute is terrible. They haven't recalibrated it. Shadows on the road, etc., etc. But I've never had anyone I trust say to me, oh, hell, this thing happened and the car flew away. So, but you also want to believe someone if they say the car drove on its own. So,
Right. Okay. So, what was it? Larry Ara says, enough talking about smoke. Thanks. So let's move on. Because we had an awesome weekend this weekend, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So Kyle invited me down to Winter Garden outside of Orlando, Florida, where a few YouTubers and or a few friends of Kyle's met up to ride some personal watercraft, like a jet ski type of situation, and they're made by this company called Taiga out of Canada, out of Quebec, Canada. They also make snowmobiles, electric snowmobiles, and Kyle, why don't you pick it up here?
We went to go ride Taiga Orcas, which are these personal watercraft jet skis with about I forget the exact battery capacity, somewhere in mid 20 kilowatt hours. 160 horsepower. They rip pretty good. They're quite expensive, but they're really fun. Really fun. I mean, we were out blasting around. They're that big acceleration. They definitely seemed a little finicky. One of them was working perfectly. The other one had a couple little issues with it. We thought at first maybe it sucked up some stuff into the impeller, but man, it just kind of was faulting a little bit. But one of them worked great, and it was awesome. And it, has DC fast charging. It has AC charging at 6 kilowatts, DC fast charging at 50 kilowatts. They claim. I doubt it, but we'll see. We got to do that test at some point. But they're just amazing. $27,000 for the carbon version that we rode. But I think most people won't go for that. They're going to go for the Orca performance version, which seems to be the best value. Same drivetrain, just with a more traditional style hull, and that's about 20 grand. And that's just, so much fun. It's definitely more expensive than a combustion jet ski, but we posted the video. I thought 3 people were going to watch it. Way more people watched it than I expected, and there were way more positive comments than I expected as well. So it was very interesting.
Oh, sweet. Oh, cool. I didn't look at your view count, but yeah, it was I don't know. I'd never driven one before. Had you ridden one before?
An Orca? No,
a jet ski of any kind?
Oh yeah, many times.
Okay. Yeah. So this was like my first time on one, and man, it felt like pretty natural. It's very like much like a snowmobile. I've got like when I was a kid, I grew up on a snowmobile. I was always on the snowmobile, and this was so much like that. Especially like just accelerating, going straight. Once you start turning, it's all a little different with the lean and then the amount of throttle that you have to put in. And with a boat too, it has like a trim level, which kind of raises or lowers the kind of front end to adjust the plane for you. For different riders will want different trims depending on how they sit and how much they weigh and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, they're pretty damn fun. I don't know, Kyle or Martin, can you play just like the first little bit of this? Just like
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. Hopefully Kyle won't give us a copyright strike.
We'll ask nicely.
Yeah. So just like pounding across, like, yeah. Like I pulled out and I just, rolled on the throttle and I was you can't really tell. It looks like it's totally smooth. But once you get going across the lake at, 50 miles an hour or so, and this thing goes 60, I think. This is top speed. You're catching air off of some of these little waves that you can hardly even see out there. And it's like, yeah.
It's so cool though. I broke my foot on a jet ski 2 years ago this summer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, I live in a harbor, and I was out on a jet ski, and just on a rough day, you really do, you do hit the wave. I must have caught my ankle or something at the wrong. It hurt. I hurt a little bit when I got off it, but I guess it's adrenaline and stuff. And then the next day, my whole ankle's black and it's getting bigger, and I'm like, I couldn't walk properly. It still hurts when it's cold and stuff, but I couldn't walk for like 3-4 months properly. It was the most stupid, first world accident. Like, oh no, how did you hurt yourself? Oh, on a jet ski. Oh, I feel so sorry for you. Oh, maybe you should have gone out on your yacht instead. So
right.
People had no sympathy.
So and I noticed you said that they cost more. You talked about the price, but we didn't really talk how much more. I know a friend of mine bought a couple. I don't know if it was Kawasaki or something jet skis just this past spring, and he paid about $12,000 each. Wow. So you think that's like the average? Kyle's shaking his head.
Well, that's for like a lower end jet ski. Right. I would say this performance wise is definitely mid or higher mid than performance. And so you're looking at like, maybe 15,000. It's like a $5,000 premium to go electric.
Okay. All right. Right. Well, it's not crazy then. It's not twice as much, more. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, people that are buying these don't care. It's a novelty thing. They're like half of our customers are putting these things on the back of their super yachts in their garages on the boat, and then they're pulling them out for fun. And then that other half are, rental companies and other stuff. And they're like, you know what, we could. I really think they could charge more, and they'd still sell every single one they can make.
Yeah. Right. But for rental companies, I wonder if it works because they need them to be in service all day, rental after rental after rental. If they have to put it out of service to recharge it, that's costing them money. It's so much easier to just get that gas can out and refuel between rentals, right?
I'm sure there are cases where what you're saying is very accurate, but I'm sure there's also other rental companies that aren't on such a time crunch.
Right.
But it does regen, by the way, which is cool. I got cool. 2 kilowatts of regen.
Right. And it shows on the screen. The screen was pretty informative. I thought it was pretty nice.
Oh, it's way better than like, let's say what GM tells you about their cars on the screen. The Taiga Orca has a great user interface.
Right on. Oh, and so if people are interested in riding one themselves, they do have like a sign up and try a product, trials for people to sign up, and maybe they'll be in your area, fingers crossed, and you could possibly try them out. And I would recommend just doing that if you have a chance, because it's just a blast. It's just amazing how much, you put that on the wild performance setting, and it's just I touched the throttle by mistake. I was just talking and I had my hand on the handlebar, and I just like flipped it a little bit by mistake. I almost rolled off the back. It was like, it was pretty, whoa, that it could have been very bad. Right. So one other thing,
especially as there were a lot of alligators in that lake.
Whoa,
true. Yeah, you don't want to fall off where we were.
Right.
And to wrap that up, Kyle bought 6 of them for his fleet, by the way.
Oh, no, I did not.
No, I think,
Wow.
But Kyle did make a good suggestion during this thing as we're wrapping up. You spend this much on a jet ski or personal watercraft or whatever. You should have jet ski to home. You should be able to use this as a power wall. It's got this battery sitting there. It's going to be sitting at your house like 98, 99% of the time. If you're personal owner, it's going to be sitting beside your house. Why not turn that into like a power wall, energy storage? Do we know how many kilowatt hours is in that battery? 20 maybe?
Yeah, I think it was mid 20, but they don't say gross or usable, which I thought was annoying.
Right. Right. And if it was used as a energy storage thing, you have to know that kind of thing. But it's also early days for a product like this. I'm not sure if there might be another manufacturer of electric jet ski that possibly.
There are. I've heard of them, but
okay.
I couldn't tell you who makes them.
Right, but I'm more familiar. I've been here watching Taiga develop their snowmobile technology for like the last 4 or 5 years now. So I'm really familiar with them. I follow them on Facebook, and they're from Quebec, where I lived for a while. So you're right; they just have my attention. But yeah, I thought that was really cool, and I think for a lot of recreational vehicles like camper trailers, once we start putting like motors and batteries in those, also vehicle to home, because it's sitting beside your house all the time. So why not get some use of that battery? All right. I guess we can move on. Anything else you want to talk about electric jet skis? That was so much fun. All right. So the Fiat 600 debuted this. Oh, no, let's talk about something else first. Tom, let's talk about the Cadillac Lyriq a little bit. So you did your 70 mile an hour highway range test this past week. And it did pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been searching to get one of these because GM Cadillac doesn't have them in media fleets yet. You can't get them on loan. Everyone's been asking for them. Kyle's been asking for one. So what I did was I've been searching on Turo where I could rent them locally, and one popped up not too far from me, about an hour and a half from where I live, and I quickly reserved it and grabbed it for the day. It's $500 rental for a day. If anybody wants to drive a Lyriq for a day, that's what it's going to cost you, plus mileage. But I rented one for the day to do range testing and also DC fast charge recording. So it's a rear wheel drive 2023. It has the 20-inch standard wheels on it. There's a 22-inch wheel option, I think, for 2024. I don't know if you could get that for the 2023 model. In any event, he has a standard 20-inch wheels. It's EPA range rated at 312 miles. That's the combined EPA range rating. I don't have the highway EPA range rating because it's getting harder to get that information. They used to publish it, and it was real easy for us to get. And now it seems like for most EVs, they're only publishing the combined, which is 312. So I was able to do my 70 mile an hour highway range test. I had a perfect day. Started off the day at like 68 degrees, finished up at like 78 or 80, somewhere around there. Very little wind. It was like 3 to 5 mile an hour wind. So those are two things that I have to worry about, temperature and wind, when I do these range tests, because they can really affect the results. But it was a perfect day for it. And the thing kicked butt, did 330 miles. We blew by the EPA range rating, kept driving, and probably could have squeezed out 2 or 3 more miles. Probably could have finished up, I'm thinking, around 333, but I didn't want to run out. I had it just for the day. I didn't have time to get towed. And like I've mentioned, when I did the Chevy Bolt EV and the GMC Hummer EV, the vehicle doesn't give you a numeric state of charge display, and it shows you the estimated remaining range until you get down to like 10 or 12 miles of remaining range. Then it goes away and just says low. So, I wasn't comfortable with just squeezing out every last ounce of it. But when I did plug in to the DC fast charger, it did say 0%. So I was pretty close. And as you can see up on the screen there, if you're watching on YouTube, Martin shows the energy usage that the final results, 330 miles, 0.3. And 104.7 kilowatt hour used. Now, the interesting thing about that is GM has published that the usable capacity is 102 kilowatt hour on the Lyriq.
Right.
I was able to squeeze out 104.7, and it wasn't dead. I'm guessing it probably had a kilowatt hour in there left. So 105 maybe even 106
Mhm.
is really what I would have been able to pull out of it if I would have just driven it till it just shut down. And that's, it's interesting. Dom, you've been working with GM on a post about the usable capacity of the Hummer EV's battery pack. And it seems like, I've driven it much and gotten much more out of the pack than GM stated 205 kilowatt hour. I think I had 212 on my range test. I think Kyle got 213 on his range test. So there's more energy in there than what GM officially announces. But the bottom line is it really is based on how you arrive at that calculation. And there's different ways that you can drain a battery to see what its usable capacity is. And I think GM's answer to you, Dom, was, and I put it in the post on Inside EVs, was something about, like it's the worst case scenario or whatever, under extreme stress when they deplete the battery, and it has 102 kilowatt hours in that situation. When I drove it on a constant 70 miles an hour, there's not a lot of stress on the pack. So you can end up pulling more energy out of the pack if it's not being highly stressed, and which is the case. So the bottom line is you can definitely pull more than the 102 kilowatt hour out of that pack than what GM says you can. And that's kind of, under promising and over delivering, which is better than doing it the other way around, in my opinion. But we finished up with 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour at constant 70 miles an hour, 330 miles. In my opinion, this is for the rear wheel drive version, by the way. Right. That's a fantastic result. That crushed it, and good on GM. This is you could drive this long distances provided the DC fast charging works well. I wouldn't be afraid to take this on a road trip.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. That's over delivering, right? Basically, right, which was like what we want to see.
Yeah. No, when you see 312 as the EPA range rating, you think, I could probably go 290 at highway speeds or something like that. A little bit less, but it definitely exceeded my expectations. And as far as I can tell, it was the first constant speed highway range test that we've seen on the Lyriq. And I'm interested to see what others find, but. It was a perfect day for it, and there wasn't a lot of traffic. I didn't have to, every now and then on these highway range tests, we might have to slow down for like a mile or two because you get a little congestion, then things speed up. That doesn't really have much of an effect on the overall driving. If you're driving for 5 hours, for 5 minutes, you're driving at 65 or whatever. But this test, I was able to just lock it in at 70 and only slow down when I turned around, when I made the loops, and, great result.
Right. And the Lyriq production ramp has been slow a bit. We expect them to be making a lot more than they are, but I think the second quarter they produced 1,348, which is I believe an improvement, but still not as much as we expected.
No, I'm really concerned about the Ultium with GM. I mean, they just can't make these vehicles. And now Silverado's launching. And now I think in the news, we're going to talk in a minute about the Blazer SS is being pushed back another quarter. It seems like GM's not really ready to put Ultium into mass production, which is concerning.
I believe with the Hummer, part of that is they want, because they're making the Silverado EV in the same factory, so they had to stop Hummer production to make the lines for the Silverado. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but it's still, I'm sure that they're making a lot fewer Hummers than they had planned to be making at this point in time. I think that's my feeling about it. Kyle, you want to think? Yeah. All right. Do we want to say anything more about the Lyriq? No. Let's move on. So, Kyle, you didn't do this, but one of your channels, you have the Tesla Model 3 LFP rear-wheel drive 70 mile an hour highway range test. When they ran it completely dead, right to zero. So that was a pretty good video. Did you get a chance to review that? Okay. And that's with Ryan, I believe, was doing the driving.
Yep. Yeah. Ryan runs Rate Your Charge. So he has a Model 3 LFP, And I was like, dude, go run a range test. He has been sort of compiling all of our data, watching every single test video we've done, and putting together these really cool interactive graphs that we'll launch on our website when we redo our site here in the coming months. But I was like, dude, go run the LFP while I'm gone. And so he did. He did the 10% challenge, and he also did a full range test. And
Okay.
this thing freaking rocks. Just so good. We all know Teslas overstate range all the time in the EPA cycle. They build the cars to game the cycle. I think this was the most efficient car we've ever tested at 70 miles an hour, well
Really?
over 4 miles per kilowatt hour. I think 4.5 or 4.6, something like
Really?
that. Yep. And well, I mean, it's no surprise. We all know this car is crazy efficient. And, it did 260 something miles, 264, I think,
Yeah,
somewhere around
264. Yeah.
yeah, and it's 272 EPA, so it's the first Tesla to pretty much match EPA in our test. And Ryan ran it all the way out to dead. I mean, he went until the car shut off, which I was like, that's how we do it. So good stuff. And he had to find some guys to push the car over to the charger, which was great.
Right.
And I was like, welcome to Out of Spec. That's great. So full commitment from him on that one.
Right. That was great. So he stopped a little ways from like a mile or so from the charge station, but he was able to get out, get back in the car. So that's like the equivalent of turning it off and on again. And then, it would turn it back on, and he would go a little bit farther, but till finally it would not go anywhere. It would not really turn on. The screen was really dim. And he made it a separate video about what to do, when that happens, what happens when your Model 3 LFP runs out of juice. What can you do? Like, you can't just push it, all of a sudden it stops. You have to, so in the video they explain, you go down on the menu, you push the car menu, you bring up the main menu, and you had to put it into tow mode.
Tow mode, yep.
Right. So, and that's under safety. I forget exactly the subheading for that.
Yeah, not sure, but it's in there somewhere. I mean, it's in the Out of Spec guide video on what to do.
Right, and it's also in this video on Out of Spec reviews. So you can check that out because it was pretty good, and it was a great video. Actually, I enjoyed it. Yeah. So put it in tow mode. That puts it in neutral, so you can push it and or load it onto a flatbed truck or whatever, because you don't want to pull them behind the vehicle. Yeah. So that is that. So,
yeah, I thought it was all interesting, all good there. I mean, the one thing from my side I'd like to talk about really quick, because I just did a 4,500 mile road trip in Tesla Model 3. And we hadn't really spoken about that because it's not been that interesting. But some interesting things happened on the way home. Where I was actually at a supercharging station, completely stranded, not able to charge. First time ever in my life.
Oh,
and
really?
I'm sorry, the dogs are just playing around a little bit here.
That's fine.
So you might hear them growling at each other and whatnot.
Is Walter there?
Yeah, Walter's here. He's playing. He's having fun. So I took the Model 3 on a trip to get Walter with Alyssa, and we got the dog, and we had a 0-issue road trip on the way out. 2,200 miles, literally. Sorry, they're crashing into the table. 1 second. You guys, maybe I'll pick this up at the end of the video. We'll try and sort them out really quick.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm curious about that. You also had, speaking of long distance trips, you put up on one of your channels this week, EV towing from Colorado to California on a crunch time over 1,000 miles straight through with the Rivian. We've talked about this trip a little bit before in the past, but now your video's up, and it was a bit of a ordeal with managing the heat, I guess, in the Rivian, and also just the towing distance, the number of times you have to recharge with that. So I don't know if you want to say anything more about that right now.
Yeah, no, I certainly can. The Rivian actually had fairly few charging issues on the drive out to California in that vehicle. The return trip is about to come up very soon, and that one actually was a little bit worse than going out.
Really?
So you'll see that very soon. But driving out, it was mostly just battling thermals of the truck. Rivian's cooling package is far undersized for the needs for it. They definitely spec'd the truck for the 99% use case, but not all use cases. And to me, that's always a little bit annoying because I use the vehicles to the maximum capabilities all the time. So you always can tell when it's like, typically the Germans engineer for everything, and they are so sorted on all the outlier stuff. And that's why I love German cars in general. Whereas, some of, new companies, Tesla actually does an amazing job with thermals, but Rivian doesn't. And so they've had some software updates to tune the thermals of the truck to be a little bit better here and there. And certainly it has improved over the last 6 months or 8 months of this truck. The cooling has gotten better, but it's still not perfect. So it means that my charging stops went from, I still need to do a deep charge with the trailer 80-90% quite often. That sometimes can take an hour, but these stops were taking sometimes longer because we would overheat the pack and we would only charge it 100 kilowatts for a period of time. So yeah, I mean, pretty brutal towing with an EV. It's early days for it, but we're going to keep doing it and keep seeing how the technology improves. I want to tow with the Silverado EV using the Tesla supercharger network as soon as possible, of course. And I think that this will be a challenge that gets better over time. It's still not the main selling point of an electric vehicle. But honestly, I bought the Rivian as my tow rig. I'm using it as needed. I didn't go out to film this video to make a point on how bad or good EV towing is. It's just I had to tow to California.
Right.
So I thought I'd film the experience, and that was my experience.
Right on. So just aside from that, just completely aside from that, something you might be able to help with, Larry R just says, I put Martian wheels on my Model 3 Performance, but my TPMS sensors are registering for the wrong wheels. My MP3 is a 2022, and there's no button for resetting the TPMS. I think it will have to go to for your dealer. You wouldn't know off the top of your head, Kyle.
Well, I just don't know what registering for the wrong wheels means. If it's showing pressure, then you're fine. If the car and the software is showing the wrong wheels, you hit the car in the bottom left, service, wheel, and tire or something like that. And then you can change the wheel configuration that you have to closest match the one that you purchased. So not 100% sure what they're looking for there.
Right. But you might be able to Google and find some stuff out. Oh, Ryan Huber's here. Awesome. Regarding thermals, Rivian is still very, very conservative with cell temperatures. Tesla allows their cells to go to 10 higher, 10 degrees Celsius higher. Also notable, my Rivian R1T has about 1% degradation, and my Plaid is at 11%. So Ryan here has also hi Al, good to see you. Yeah, so Ryan here has a Model S Plaid for a few years now, I guess, 2-3 years. I think it's been.
Yeah, I reviewed his Model S Plaid. He has the one with the round steering wheel. He also has a couple Rivians. Awesome guy. If you don't follow Ryan, you really should. He's a super genius. And totally agree. I mean, that's Rivian's just not pushing the pack as hard as I want. I want I don't care about degradation, get me out of this charging station mode. And it doesn't have that. Whereas Tesla is just 62 degrees Celsius. My Model 3, every charging stop on this road trip, 65.7 degrees Celsius. But I also have an issue with my Model 3 where one of the cooling valves isn't working. So it's actually overheating my Model 3, which is not a fault of the design of Tesla, just age on the car. So that needs to go and get looked at. But, I just did, 30 supercharging stops, 40 supercharging stops. Every single one of them, the pack was in the red. So I'm really curious to do a battery health test once I get this all sorted to see if I smoked the battery or not.
Right. So now can you tell us about that Tesla supercharger stop?
Yeah. So the trip was amazing. We shot 2 videos as we typically do, the out and then the return. And the out, the whole premise of the video, which will launch in a couple of weeks, is here's why automakers are switching to NACS and here's what they're going to get. And it's around really talking to automakers that haven't yet made the announcement to switch to the supercharger network. And it's here's what your customers will experience. Now, granted, the only thing that will be different would be that the plug-in to charge time, the handshake time, will be a little bit slower than Tesla's. But once you get interoperability worked out, which they will be for anyone joining the Tesla supercharger network, they're going to do these back-end tests, is my understanding. Then you'll be good to go. So basically, we went out every single stop. We backed in, plugged in. Within a few seconds, we were at full power without question. Every single stop. It was just amazing. It got to the point where at the end of the trip, I would just plug in and walk away, wouldn't even check. And then, then I'd be like, oh, am I charging on the phone app? And it's oh yeah, of course, 255 kilowatts. Of course we're charging. So that was just amazing. And we had a perfect trip all the way until we got to Kansas City, just west of Kansas City.
Okay.
And we were navigating to a Tesla supercharger in Lawrence, Kansas. And the car says it's available. It's all good. And then like, as we're like a couple miles away, it went from like, 12 stalls available to 9. I'm like, wow, that's cool. A lot of Teslas must have just showed up there. And then it went to like 3 as we were pulling in. And as we were pulling in, you'll see it in the video, of course, there's these service crews that have the green transformer open. And then I was like, oh, this is not going to go well, is it? And then, I back into a supercharging stall. And the guy walks over to me. He's like, you're not going to be able to charge. Sorry. So I'm like, is it a problem with the superchargers? He's like, no. It's on our end, the grid end. So basically they lost power. And they couldn't really figure out why they lost power. And so, not the end of the world really, but we just got in this bad timing zone where the Tesla nav system didn't tell us the station was offline completely until after we got there. Because after I had tried to plug in, we unplugged. The car said, hey, you still need to charge here because you're out of juice, but the supercharger's closed. Right. So it's like find an alternative charging location. So it did its job, but there was still this lag period that we were in where it didn't update to the car quick enough. So that's something that needs to happen on Tesla's back end a little bit quicker. When a station goes offline, especially to all the cars that are routing to that station, immediately reroute them. This was like maybe a 15-minute delay was my impression, or even more because the crews were on site already. And so thankfully, I didn't run it to 0, which I typically do. And we had, 10 or 11%, something like that left.
Okay.
And so we were able to drive 50 miles an hour to the next supercharger. And we stretched it all the way, pulled in on fumes, of course. And then we were good. Interestingly, as we plugged in a couple superchargers later, now deep into the middle of Kansas, we plugged in and we started hearing these like electrical arcing noises happening in the background, and not near us. I'm talking like 2-3 miles away, like these, these zzz noises, like when you like open a contactor basically and it arcs. I was like, damn, something's crazy is going on. And I was watching our charging and it didn't seem to be affected at all. So we were good. But actually, as soon as we pulled away and got to the next charger, it said the one we were just at, which we pulled in at 0 on that one, was offline. So Kansas, this is not a supercharger problem. This is a Kansas grid problem.
Right.
What I think it highlights the need for, like a lot of Electrify America stations actually, and some Tesla superchargers, is a small amount of on-site energy storage, just enough to handle the crew that either isn't checking their nav on the way to the charger, or the folks that, like us, were caught, navigating to the charger and it hadn't updated to our car in time. And so I'm talking like if Tesla has some sort of refurbishing battery program where they could take, 3 or 4 old Model 3 battery packs, just a couple 100 kilowatt hours at most, just to dump enough into cars to get them to the next station as a backup, could be really a useful tool.
Yeah. I think batteries always, there's a number of good reasons to have batteries at EV, charging stations, I think. But all right. So speaking of like local grids and things, you also had a video yesterday about the Ameren, Missouri ChargePoint DC fast chargers. Like they were all like underrated or offline. I don't know if you found out what was going on with that.
No, so I've had a few different people text me, but the sad part about this is ChargePoint's been silent, Ameren's been silent, and the actual locations that host the chargers have been silent. Right. And what that leaves is EV drivers in the dark as to what's going on. So some folks are asking about the state of Electrify America. We should talk about that actually. So we'll definitely touch on that topic in a little bit. The sad part about this is we don't know why the chargers are all derated. But my friend Robert, who is a great YouTuber, Aging Wheels, went around, and he lives in Missouri. And he's like, this is actually like making it almost impossible for me to own my Polestar. What's going on here? And just seems crazy to me. So, I had some folks text me today that are like, hey, Ameren doesn't operate the sites. They're at the site. That particular site host runs that charger and derates them. But I'm like, there's no way that like 15, I don't know the number, but all of these individual site hosts got together and reduced power on the same day at the same, like that's just not a thing. Right. And so that can't be it. And it's got Ameren's name on it, which is the utility. They're claiming that Ameren doesn't operate the chargers. as far as I can tell, it looks like they do.
Right.
But either way, it doesn't matter who operates it, who owns it, whatever it is. It's got Amarin's name on it. It's got ChargePoint's name on it. They're the ones that are going to take the heat for it. And their chargers should just work at full power all the time. Like, not cool.
Right. Yeah, it was really weird. I believe your friend was saying at first that maybe he thought it was the just a general area, all the air conditioning demands of the time. They meant they wanted to lower the output of the chargers because it's like a lever they can pull to help conserve the energy they have. But but then again, then he said yes, but there's so few EVs charging, it's not going to make a much difference in the grand scheme of things, right?
And also, like, you're not going to have peak demand at night, so you would think they would just unlock them again,
right?
After the demand has shifted. So definitely not the case. And if that is the case, they're doing it wrong,
right?
Because that's not how.
It's possible. It's possible they're just doing it wrong.
Well, someone is somewhere.
Right.
We don't know who yet, or if it's even worth the big investigation into this because it's such a small thing. But the video's, great. I encourage you to watch it. It was great to have Robert on our channel. I'm one of his biggest fans, so it's great to work with him on this one and probably some more in the future. And just crazy to me that we're dealing with all of these charging problems on public networks, regardless of the supplier. Meanwhile, you go to Tesla, and I had one issue in a 4,500 mile trip. And it was going to be zero, but the grid went down. So, you can't even blame Tesla for that one. I mean, maybe you can a little bit because they could do more for resiliency. But just like Tom's totally correct. Once the supercharger network opens, we are not routing to any of this garbage. We are going straight to Tesla superchargers, and that's it.
Right. Well, unless they get their act together, we'll have to see. I mean, Sharon, swore up and down when Ford first made their decision to jump to NACS that Charon was going to have this all sorted out real soon.
But Charon focuses on interoperability and the standard, not everything else that happens in the charging world, not the conversion, the AC to DC rectifying blocks, not the software that manages it. That's all the stuff that's breaking.
Okay.
That's the part that's bad.
Yeah. So I guess, we'll have to see. Like we said before, though, the charging networks have their work cut out for them. They have to show that they're reliable, or they'll lose out on the billions they've invested, which no one wants to see that, I don't think.
I don't really care. As long as I've had a place to charge the car, what do I care if these companies lose money?
Sure. I was thinking more inside the company, though, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Some of them care, some don't. But interestingly, there's still a lot of work for Tesla to do with third-party vehicles and making them work. Longer cables is going to be a big hot topic. The also higher voltage. I've been pushing this one a lot. They really need 1,000-volt support for V3 as soon as possible. That's what's holding up a lot of companies from switching right now. And then also the power sharing capabilities of version 3 is a big limitation for some of these high power charging companies, cars to charge there. So, each Tesla supercharger is only 360 kilowatts per cabinet, feeding 4 posts. But the magic is they can take power from the other cabinets and feed it to that one. So the end user, you never really notice it other than when you have a bunch of Teslas arrive at low state of charge at the same time. And close them all down. But they've been able to work this out because Teslas don't hold peak power very long. They peak and then they die off. And so that allows the charging station to get everyone to their maximum. As soon as we start seeing Hummer EV or even Rivians that can hold peak power longer, well, then we're going to actually get closer to maxing out those V3 stations very quickly. Right. And that's when V4 is going to become necessary, which I hope they solve some of these power sharing limitations. I love that they can do site level power distribution, and it works perfectly for their cars. It just doesn't work great for some other cars that hold big power longer.
Right. And this is where I don't know if version V4 is going to have stationary storage on site, but that would really help things out, I think.
Well, no question. Some of them will, at least, because they're already doing that with V3. But whether or not all of them will, we don't know.
Right. Okay, let's move along. Let's see where we're at. Oh, yeah. So a couple new Fiats unveiled this week, debuted this week. These are for Europe right now, but I shared this one because the Fiat 500e is coming to North America. And so the 600e has just debuted. and I think it may eventually come. If they're going to sell the 500e here, why not the 600e? Right? That's what I was thinking. They haven't announced that yet, but I'm thinking it's a possibility at least. So this is basically it's based on the same platform as the Jeep Avenger that's only sold in Europe. It's a B segment, so like a compact. It's on the eCMP2 platform. So I believe they can also, yes, they're going to make a hybrid version of this available. So it's not going to be just a strictly EV 600e. They're going to have like a from mid 2024. They're also going to have a hybrid version of this out there. But the electric version gets about 249 miles of range, WLTP. It's got a 54 kilowatt hour battery pack, DC charge at 100 kilowatts peak. And it goes to 80%, they say, in less than 30 minutes, which is kind of an interesting juxtaposition of numbers, because 100 kilowatts is not like a super high level, but less than 30 minutes is, okay amount of time. So the charge of 80% in less than 30 minutes with only hitting 100, it means it's probably got a pretty steep or pretty high curve all the way along till the end, I'm guessing. We'll see eventually, but 0 to 60 in this thing is 9 seconds, so it's not hugely powerful. And the price tag is 35,950 euros, or about 39,000 equivalent in US dollars. So, Martin, this is in your neck of the woods.
Yep, bang on, absolutely perfect. Good, decent sized battery. It could be a little bit bigger, but no, look, decent sized battery, decent charging, decent price, decent size. And I think this really appeals to Fiat buyers and people who want this kind of family car in their driveway. I think it suits us really well.
Right.
It's bang on for now. I like stats wise and technically, it's perfect for now. We won't say this in 5 years' time, but I come on. It's absolutely perfect. And I think that they're this is so good. And we've seen this we've seen this with the Jeep as well. Just hitting all the right spots for now. Right now, great price, right size battery, not too big, not too small, not too heavy a car, and it will do lots of things for you, a bit like a Golf. It'll carry people around if you need to, but if you're the only person in the car, it won't be like you're driving a stupidly large vehicle for a single occupant. It'll get you around the city. It'll do decent road trips as well. It charges quick enough. You're not going to blow anyone's socks off, but they're saving money as well, and it's going to hit a really good sweet spot. I think it's great.
Martin, question for you. You mentioned it does everything like a Golf should. What about ID3? Are those popular by you? Because when I'm over in Europe, I don't really see them that often.
No, and will be interesting to see, because they just reduced the factory output of ID3 this week, having said that they overestimated the demand. And it's really interesting because it was good when it launched, but right. It hasn't had the best press since, I think. And then there was the whole kind of, there's a 4-seater version, but you can't carry 5 people because the battery's too heavy. And then, but we're going to make it better. So, so don't worry, because we know the software's a bit rubbish, but we're going to make it better. And there was a lot of kind of, this isn't the finished product yet, feeling around the ID3. And I don't get any of that with Stellantis. I think they feel very confident in their vehicles, and they're hitting the right spot as well. And the little Fiat 500e is fantastic, and this is great. Being a 600, it's really interesting to look at. Someone in the comments said that the the car looks like it's done with you. the eyes on it, like just done with you. It's quite. It has got little eyebrows on it. It's great. It's just full of character. I think this will go down really, really well. Perfect.
Robert Davidson says those headlamps scream for lashes, car lashes. I don't know if you've ever seen those. I don't know.
I've seen the lashes on
some of your cars?
People put them on Beetles, I think. Yeah, I've seen people put lashes on cars. Yeah, of course.
You wouldn't even have to put lashes on this if you just painted black lines across the top half where it's orange, like they would look like lashes. So you don't have to have those things sticking out like the Beetles do.
Right. So I mentioned that Fiat debuted a couple of EVs. So they had I don't know if Kyle likes this one, but I think he'll like this next one. So they debuted the 2023 Fiat Topolino EV. It comes in 2 flavors, and it starts at $10,770. which is a
It's
great
fine.
low price. Yeah. So this is almost 2,000. So this is basically, as you can tell, this is based on the Citroen Ami, which Kyle is a big fan of, famously. And,
I love the VIP rope as the door.
I know, they should
Right,
make
right,
that
right.
red. They
So
should
this
definitely
is-
make it red. Your name's not down, you're not coming in.
Exactly.
So Fiat used to make a Topolino back in the day, and it was based on the Fiat 500. And so it had no doors. It had this like rope, and I think it had like a it was open like a convertible, but it had like a piece of fabric up above for a roof. It's very breezy. So this is almost $2,000 more than the Citroen Ami, but it does have a chrome luggage rack, something called the Dolce Vita box, which is a functional band of fabric inside of which personal items can be stored. I don't know. Vintage chrome effect mirrors. It also has optional a shower. I don't know. I guess so. So this is traditionally the Topolino has been like a beach going thing, something to take to the beach. So after you're done swimming in the ocean, if you get the option, you can kind of hose off at your car. But you see, and it has this big luggage rack on the back. I kind of like this spec. I don't know, Kyle. You like this over the regular Citroen?
Not over the Ami,
Oh,
but
yeah?
I do like. I'm not really a beach guy. I like the
Right.
Ami off-roady buggy version.
Right. That's true.
Yeah, the one with the big wheels on it.
And
Big
we're looking at it here with doors on it instead of the VIP rope. I kind of like the VIP rope.
All of these are just great. And VinFast has their own version of this now. Like everyone's going to have one of these. I just want someone to bring it to America, and I'll buy whichever version comes in first.
Yeah.
It's so funny that like, because it's Italian, and maybe maybe I've got some inbuilt biases that I need to deal with. But the Citroen Ami, I think is cool and funky, and I love it, and I'm in love with that car. But then this comes out, and it's Fiat, and it's Italian, and it's espresso, and it's scooters and Vespa, and and all of a sudden I'm like, no, I like this one more. They're the same car. Come on, what am I thinking? But I like this one more just because it's got all those Italian things that it triggers off in me, and I like the wheels. The solid wheels look really cool, and the styling is subtly different. But there's something about it being, once you make it Italian and Fiat, it might just be me. I think it looks so cool. And
Yeah,
10 grand
does.
is fine. 10 grand is fine.
Now, Kyle, this is a Nev. This isn't like a road car. Like, where would you be able to drive? Let's say somebody did import it. Like, it's got a 28 mile an hour top speed. This is kind of like a Florida closed community car, right? Like where people drive golf carts back and forth. You couldn't take this out on any major road. It doesn't even meet like a minimum speed limit. So like, I almost think you could bring one over now and use it as a Nev.
You're thinking like a German person. This is America. we take our cars everywhere with or without license plates. That's how I drive around in the Twizy. But here's the thing. I did a video with one of the powertrain engineers of this. He knows how to tune them to go fast.
Yes.
So I drove one, and it does like 55 or 60 miles an hour. So that's the first thing we do with this. We get this, we tune it up to 1 million, put a Model 3 motor in the back. I don't care. Make it pop a wheelie. And, then we're off. And then we just drive it everywhere.
Right.
What was that? What was the car that you reviewed? You got like 1 million views on your channel for it. What was that? Ages ago.
The Candy.
That was it. The Candy. That got loads of
K.
love. It never happened.
Yeah, it never happened. They were like, oh, it's happening. And that's when I learned it doesn't exist until it's real, until you can buy it. And that's why I don't really do anything with prototypes unless I'm fairly certain they're going to come to market.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But speaking of weird, quirky electric cars, I bought one this week.
Oh yeah, that's true. I meant to mention that. Oh my god, you don't have any pictures of it up anywhere, do you?
Yeah, on Twitter.
Okay, maybe Martin can.
I'll find
dig that up real quick.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too far back, but it seems like the deal is going to go through. It's a smoking deal on one of these things. We're talking well under, $4,000, and it's really not very expensive. But the car that I bought is a 1981 commuter car, which is a cheese wedge, and
which they made it in Sebring, Florida, I believe, right?
So that was how they originally. That was the city car, and then they got transferred over to commuter car in the 80s. And I don't know if they were still kept the same Sebring thing, but this one looks mint. This
Right.
lady had 3 of them. She had a red one, a blue one, and a green one. I said, I'll take the green one. That's cool. I really wanted a yellow one because I wanted to do a
Okay.
whole cheese theme. But
Right. Green
you know,
cheese, though, could be from
yeah.
the moon.
Sure. So we got to come up with a funny license plate idea for this. It's going to a friend of mine, Declan, here in Colorado, who's a college student, but restores classic electric cars. And
Right,
he's
wow.
going to do a whole restoration series for us on putting in the new batteries and the motor and the controllers. And we're going to get it up and running and registered, and we'll drive it around. It's going to be a really fun project. And it's, you know, what's so fun about this is going to do, you know, great just for conversation. It's such a cool specialty car, and the whole project will be done for single-digit thousands of dollars completed, which is just, you know, that's cheap fun. And
Yeah.
when these things are done, they're worth $10,000 to $15,000 for a fully functional one. And
Oh, yeah.
one this clean is really nice. So
Yeah.
I don't think I'll sell it, but if we needed to, we could make some money on the project as well. It just is it's a great buy. It's a great idea. My friend's going to pick it up for me in Ohio on Saturday, tomorrow. And so hopefully all seems to go well. I don't know what this lady did with them. She had 3.
Kyle, everyone that owned them owned multiple ones.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because as they like went out of business,
Right.
people bought them up like and kept them as spare parts. So like I knew a bunch of people that own these. I've driven one a while ago, but everyone I know that owned one owned more than one.
That's amazing. Yeah, so it has you know, dead lead acid batteries in there. We're going to do a lithium conversion.
Okay.
And I was talking to Declan, and I'm like, can I put a Model 3 motor in this thing? He's like, it would literally split in half. So no, but we are going to put maybe like a Danfoss motor or something in there. A couple Tesla Model S battery pricks is what our plan is.
Okay.
And yeah, it's going to be freaking awesome.
The wheels are awesome. They're like 10 inches. they're like lawnmower wheels. I don't know if you have a side picture of it or not, but they're tiny, the wheels. Those actually look bigger than what I remember. I remember when I drove it, looking at them and are like the wheels on my lawnmower are bigger. But anyway,
I love the
cool
bumpers
car.
on this. They made them put these huge safety bumpers on. I'm not sure if the original ones had that, but you know, eventually some legislation passed where they got had to add these huge bumpers to the front and rear of the car, which is something that also happened to the Mitsubishi iMIV when it came to the US. They had to stick this huge bumper on the front that kind of distorts the whole styling of the car.
And the Mercedes, you remember in the 70s or the convertible Mercedes, remember it had that huge bumper on the front. I remember I talked to Mercedes people. They were so mad that they were forced to put that on there. It stuck out like 12 inches.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this looks ridiculous. I mean,
I'm going to take those stupid things off for sure.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
No, you got to keep it original.
I mean,
no, we're going to
originally it wasn't supposed to have those, really.
We're putting a new powertrain in them. We're going to make it as intended without these stupid bumpers on it. And then, you know, unless people really freak out, but you know,
the front bumper was always on there from what I can remember. I don't know about that rear platform, but it always had like a big bumper on the front that stuck out.
We could just mount a generator to the rear platform and have infinite range.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
You're really funny. Like a little Honda generator on the back.
That'd be awesome.
I would say, the V twin off of a what do you call that British sports car, the 3-wheeler.
Yeah, all of these.
Morgan.
Yeah,
the Morgan. Yeah.
Oh, the Morgan. Okay.
Yeah,
well, these are 80s. Can you type in 1970s city car?
1970. There we go. See?
Okay, so that's got a
nice
bumper.
Yeah.
Bumpers.
Okay.
Yeah, look, that's nice, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's classy.
Yeah.
It's nice. I like the little wheels, the little solid wheel. Oh yeah, look, that's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
You
going to
gotta
be
restore
so
it.
much fun to just, it's going to be a summer project. It should be done probably just in time for winter where we can't drive it. And, you know, just a really fun, happy little thing to have around. I can't wait to do the series because I think it'd be fun to explore what it takes to repower old electric vehicles or old vehicles in general. And so this is really the start of us getting into that.
Yeah.
Right.
And the background for this car was it was thought up and created at when we had the energy crisis, the oil embargo in the early 70s here in the U.S. There were a few companies that came out and said, you know, electric is viable. It's difficult to make it work, but we can make it work. So they made these little cars to kind of stick up the middle finger to OPEC, who was really, had a stranglehold on the energy that they were exporting. So that's how this started. Most of those companies failed before they ever even got to production. But the commuter car made it, and they made quite a few of these. I remember seeing them on the roads in the 70s.
Yeah, they're not rare. They seem to be everywhere. It's what's hard to find are like really clean examples now. And the one I got seemingly from the photos looks perfection. Like it looks like a time capsule. So I just am so excited about it. And best project of the year from our side.
Yep. Right on. That's gonna be fun. I'm gonna have to. You say it's gonna be in Colorado. How long is it before it's a roadworthy or licensed on the road? Do you think?
Yeah, I was
No
talking to
idea?
Declan about that. And so, the car, like, we're going to go through it, need obviously new tires. We're going to upgrade the
Mhm.
brakes if we can, because those, I think, were a big problem. I mean, it's going to be a few month project. Declan's got other stuff going on. He's a full-time college student. So, I told him, like, I just want to drive it before the first snowfall. And he's like, we can make that happen. But,
Okay.
with all of these things, you never want to put a time crunch on them. It's all
Right.
about getting it done right, find the
Sure.
right components, the right installer, and the fun can be had when it's done.
Right. So we're almost out of time here. We are actually, but I just wanted to also mention the Rivian this week, because they've done had a bit of a turnaround in some respects. So they've announced that, or Amazon announced that it started operating Rivian EDV 500 electric vans in Europe. And so, and Amazon now has over 5,000 EDVs making deliveries across the US. And Rivian itself has tripled EV production and deliveries in Q2 of 2023. So I think it was like 14,000 some vehicles they produced this quarter, which at this rate it'll still be below what they expect to do for the year. So that's going to be increasing still over the next couple quarters. But it's really all this news together, for whatever reasons, has really affected the Rivian stock price, which is basically the confidence in the company, being able to deliver on its promises over time. And it's been in the basement for a long time. It had overvalued, and I think it's been undervalued for quite a while, and now it's just like starting to bubble up above $20, which was still, I think, low, but but that's for the market to decide, all that kind of stuff. But it's just kind of nice to see them getting some positive, feedback now, right? I don't talk, and I saw my first one actually. We have the Rivian EDV delivery van on the screen right now, the Amazon van. I saw my first one this past weekend when I went down to meet up with Kyle, and then on the way back, I saw like a transporter with a number of them on it, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Anyone want to say anything about Rivian this week?
No, but there's two more topics that we just have to touch on really quick,
Sure.
because we
Yeah.
promised we would mention the EA update discussion, which
right,
is,
yeah.
why are some stations still derated? What's going on? The answer is we have no clue. And the answer is we probably won't ever have a clue. And the track record here is they're not willing to fix their equipment properly for the last many number of years. And, maybe they're trying as hard as they can. Maybe it's supply. Maybe it's something, this, that, or the other. I don't know. Unless it's a specific station, it doesn't really make sense for us to go and try and get that information, because if we look at overall network, they use very weird metrics to gauge their uptime and reliability. They're like, we've had this many successful charging sessions. And I'm like, how many failed sessions have you had? What were the power levels for they just don't want to share a lot of this stuff. So we don't know. The other topic is, it doesn't really matter anymore, because we'll all just be using superchargers. That's why I don't even care. It's like, we just got to get through the next few months. And if you own a vehicle that has partnered with Tesla superchargers, your problems are over.
In 2024, next year they're over.
Yeah. So next year. So all good. I think at the end of the day, EA was very reliable on my Rivian trip that we just did on the way out, but on the way back, not so much. Also, Alyssa's sister Michaela owns an ID4. She just took a huge, 2,500 mile road trip in her ID4. And she's not like a huge EV nerd or anything. She's just like, why every station that I go to, I have to move my car around. There's at least 2 stations not working. There's people that don't understand. And she's just like, this sucks. And I'm like, you know what? Volkswagen is going to have to announce soon that they're going to partner, on NACS, and they're going to have access to the supercharger network, and you won't have to worry about it. Because she's like, I'm going to trade my ID4 in for a Model Y now. And I'm like, just hold on for a little bit. I'm sure you'll get access to the Tesla Supercharger network in one way or another. So the answer is, EA in some of the most needed charging locations still having reduced power output. We see it on Rate Your Charge all the time. Tom, is there anything more you want to add on this?
No, not really. We don't know. We stopped asking because we just don't get much answers, and when we ask them about, like Kyle said, specifics about uptime, downtime, the answer we typically get is, look, nobody else gives you that information, so we're not going to either. Nobody else, they're talking about like ChargePoint, EVgo, they don't release that type of granular information about uptime and whatever. So I think as long as they all hold together and nobody starts releasing it, they can all say, well, nobody else does, so you're not getting it from us either. And, we just have to try to figure things out ourselves. We're not going to get really communication on this point. When things break, we have to guess and hope that we're right.
But there is definitely a trend. Sorry, Martin. There's a trend right now where a lot of the stations are derated to 50 kilowatts, and we don't have an answer as to why. Maybe it's failing power modules. We don't know. To be honest, I don't even want to go down this path again, because every time we go and we figure out a problem and they fix it, something else pops up. It's happened 10 times in a row. So, I don't know, but I'm excited about the future of reliable charging off that network.
I'm just trying to sign into the network to see what's going on with my local Electrify America chargers.
But the thing is, you don't even really know until you get there and start plugging into stuff, because you can't rely on the app to tell you what's going on. I mean, we just did part of this Tesla road trip on the way out was, when convenient, we stopped at other charging networks, EVgo, Electrify America, ChargePoint, Blink, etc. And we were like, hey, we just charged up real easy at the supercharger. Let's go to the EA station. We went to one, in Flagler, Colorado, which is a needed stop on I-70. And it's like 2 of them were at 50 kilowatts and 2 of them were completely unusable. And we're like, this is a 50 kilowatt charging station for 2 cars. It's not possible. So that's, we feel the frustrations. We don't have any inside information that you think we do. We just share the experiences we have using the network. And I've had great road trips using CCS cars and Electrify America, and I've had some poor ones and I've had some mixed ones. And actually, my Rivian experience I thought was fairly positive. I thought it was a great road trip on the way out that I used them. But leave that up to you to decide when you watch the video.
Right.
All I was going to say was, for anyone who's not been a long-time viewer of this podcast, is EA used to be a sponsor of ours for quite a long time, and they never once told us not to talk about unreliability. The only time that we had a phone call was when I did a bit on regulation, because maybe here in Europe we have more regulators, and I just said that, it seems to me like we regulate water and food quality and electricity and mobility is so important, and we regulate internet providers now, because it's now, you can't just have a Wild West in the internet. It's a part of life. You need to get online to actually live. Right. And I did a bit on how I think charging networks should have a regulator.
So that's only because every time I would say this show is sponsored by Electrify America, and I'm like, you should see how bad my charging experience was, because I don't take any money to do the show, and I hated that we were sponsored by them. Yeah. And so I was like, they really sucked. They almost screwed me on that road trip. So yeah,
they didn't renew.
I'm sure they didn't sponsor us again, because I did not want that.
I couldn't see them ever spending money again to sponsor us, because it would open them up to like, hey, why are you advertising on a podcast that points out how bad you are? They just wouldn't. I don't see them doing much advertising or even being proud of what they do. It's just really sad now. Just such an opportunity. They had so much money put into it as well. It's just, I'm a long way from it. So maybe I'm a bit removed. I'm not personally frustrated when I can't charge my car on it. Must be harder for you guys, but yeah, it's really sad.
If they were smart, they would tell us they want to sponsor the podcast, and then say, but as part of the sponsorship, once a month, we want to have a guest on of Electrify America to answer your questions.
That'd be great.
How good would that be? And then we could corner them and say things, but you can't hide from this stuff. That's how, if I'm running a company, you can't hide from it. It's better to try to get it out in the open, even if you get the crap beat out of you once a month. you know what? You sit there and you take it and you say, guys, you know, there's problems with, you know, well, why are you derating it? Well, you know, we're having issues with some blown fuses. We don't want the stations to go down completely. So we're derating the power till we figure this out and improve it so that we can give you full power. Listen, getting 50 kilowatts better than getting nothing, isn't it? So that's what we're doing. We're hoping to figure this out in a couple of months. I mean, that's how you deal with this. And that's how at least I would deal with it if I was running the company. So anyway, we don't, you know, we're not asking Electrify America to sponsor this podcast. I'm just saying I would do that if I were in their shoes. In any event, I know we're up against it, Dom. There's one last thing I wanted to mention before we run. I don't know if we're going to cut out yet. We're already at an hour and 40. General Motors announced their vehicle to home packages this week. So it's nothing huge. We knew this was coming, but I just wanted to quickly overview that they're offering 3 different packages. The basic Ultium Home vehicle to V2H bundle that has they call it the Power Shift EVSE. That's their 19.2 kilowatt AC charging unit, comparable to, say, Ford's Charge Station Pro that I have behind me here in my garage. And then they sell what they call an enabling kit. Ford calls it the home integration kit. And it has the same products. They're different products, but the same type of products. It has an inverter, a home hub, and a dark start battery. They actually call it the dark start battery, as Ford does, leading me to think that it's actually the same battery. And that's a tiny little lithium-ion battery that powers the system. When you get a power outage, there needs to be some kind of power so everything can communicate and then start the vehicle to home energy flow. And that's the basic Ultium Home V2H bundle. Then you can add stationary energy storage. And that's called the Ultium Home Energy System, which includes everything that I just discussed in the vehicle to home kit, plus a stationary battery that's either 10.6 kilowatt hour or 17.7 kilowatt hour. You have that option. The third option is the Ultium Home Energy Storage Bundle. And that's if you don't want the vehicle to home capability from your GM vehicle to the home. You just want to have, you know, a home energy storage. Let's say you have solar. You can buy this system and you don't get the charger because, you know, you're not interested in powering your home with your vehicle now. Now you just want your solar to power the battery and then the battery to power the house. So they're offering 3 different options. Pricing hasn't been released yet, but looks very similar to what Ford put out. It's actually, you know, the same type of components, except they're also offering the stationary energy storage. Ford doesnn offer that through their system. You can get that through Sunrun, which is Ford's installation partner. GM is going with SunPower, is their preferred like solar installer and partner.
You know what would have been really convenient about this, Tom, is if they just announced it 2 weeks ago when we were at the event.
Yeah, I know.
No, that's too convenient.
And how about if they had one there for us to take pictures of, even if it didn't work, you know? So, but no, they didn't. You know. Yeah, you would think, you know.
Honestly,
it's
guys, when we run the world, things are going to be so different,
right?
Yeah.
Man, when we run the world.
And Kyle and I talked about this compared to, and I don't mean to beat up GM. I'm rooting for them. The Silverado's great vehicle. It's going to be fantastic. But when we compared what Ford did for the launch of the Lightning, and they like rented out this gigantic area and had different garages set up, one to show you the home integration kit. They had Ryan O'Gorman there, who's like their specialist, to explain everything. He did a presentation, showed you how the truck powers the house, all that. Then you went over to another station and it was Pro Power on board. They had all kind of equipment there set up. Now GM did that with the Silverado. They had like power tools and stuff set up, but they even had a truck charging a Mach-E outside to show the vehicle to vehicle so it could charge. It was just like completely set up, and the GM media event was great. And don't get me wrong, I'm thankful that they invite us and let us get early access to these vehicles and so forth. But it seemed like it wasn't like they needed another month of planning. You know, they needed to have this kit there on site. They needed to have a little bit more information about the power bar that they're going to offer in different plug configurations, what the pricing is going to be on that. The vehicle to vehicle cable wasn't there. They didn't know when it was going to be available or what the pricing was. It was kind of like the vehicle's ready before the ecosystem is going to be ready for it. And yeah, I mean, maybe I'm nitpicking here, but it would have been nice if everything was ready and we could just do the whole story on the vehicle and the whole ecosystem around it, because that's what we have now with this type of vehicle, with this work truck. There's an ecosystem of accessories and things that it can do. Not unlike the gas cars, when they do media events, they really only have to worry about the vehicle. But these electric vehicles have so many different options and things that they can do. All that should be ready day one, so we could talk about it, and that completes the picture of what the vehicle can offer, particularly businesses, because that's what we did the work truck. And for us to tell the story for businesses on why this is such a good vehicle, I think it would have been better if we had the whole ecosystem of accessories ready at the time. That's my nitpick.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair criticism. I've been to a few GM events, and they've already been good, the ones that I've been on, but the Silverado ones didn't sound like it was quite fully baked.
It was good. It wasn't fully baked. That's the answer. Like Kyle said, the perfectly would have been nice if this was announced 2 weeks earlier. Yeah. Why wasn't that there for us to talk about? It's kind of a big thing to celebrate. This truck can power your home or your business in a pinch. If needed, and here's the equipment, and this is how it works. But I don't know, maybe strategically it's better for them to release this stuff in pieces. It continues to get interest, but anyway, I was disappointed that it wasn't there.
Right. Well, I think we've pretty much run out of our time, so that brings us to the end of our show. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them on the Inside EV's forum podcast thread or on our YouTube or Twitch comment sections. If you like the show, please give us a thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube. Don't forget, you can find and follow our panelists on Twitter, and now some on Threads as well, which is like the new Twitter-like Instagram thing. Kyle Connor is at Virtual Kyle on Threads. He's on Twitter. It's Kyle Connor. Tom, are you on Threads yet?
Yes, I am.
Are you
at Tom.Malogany?
Tom.Malogany. Okay, I'll look him up. And on Twitter, you are Tomolog with 2 M's. And Martin Lee is at EV News Daily on Twitter, and also your EV News.
Yeah. I don't know why EV News Daily is gone already, but it's EV News, which is actually kind of more funky. So I'll take EV News.
Right.
It's fine.
Sweet.
I'm still a Twitter shill. I love Twitter.
I
just love Twitter.
This thing's kind of taken off. So it's
taken off, but it's got a lot of bugs still. It's like not very feature rich.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's day one basically. So
yeah. And also there's no following. There's no. It's the algorithm that Zuckerberg wants to give you. And so I've just I've got British Vogue and these fashion stores, and it's like none of this is of any interest. Just show me pictures of cars.
Right.
But we get in there. I'm liking the right channels, and I'm hiding and muting and blocking all the NAF stuff, and it's getting there. But just give me a following page and DMs, and that'll be fine. But I still love the disaster that is Twitter for the entertainment value.
Well, I think the EV community is really strong on Twitter, and it's really easy to get good. If you do it like Kyle does, you just go in, post your stuff. You don't look around at anything else besides electric cars or batteries or whatever. You're probably going to be okay. But
yeah, I don't do much exploring on Twitter, to be honest. I kind of post and then dip. The post and ghost, as someone says. But
post and ghost.
That's great, because then I get to see what our viewers are thinking and interacting with. And so I'm just getting the input of people who watch our videos. So it's awesome from my side.
Right on. Well, I'm still on post.news and Spoutable and Mastodon, and I'm on Threads under Drive Electric with Dominic. And so, but here, click subscribe, tap that bell icon for notifications, and we'll thank you all very much for joining us. And we'll see you all again next week. Ciao.